Tube News Today, February 26, 2022. Headlines. Tube is the voice for the voiceless, non-profit humanitarian channel. Please be voice for the voiceless. Follow, share and subscribe. If you are dissatisfied with our programs, don't hesitate to write us your comments, questions and suggestions. You know, the innocent people of Tigray is suffering from varieties of human rights violations in Ahoyd and horror for almost 16 months. While the world is watching like a football match on Tigray genocide, for 16 months we have heard crying in the same pitch on Ukraine-Russian war. Tigrayans in UN peacekeeping force fear return to Ethiopia by Associated Press.
Secretary Blinken said the United States will be addressing the matter of Ukraine matter and sanction on Somalia. However, sanction on Ethiopian and Eritrean war criminals and genociders looks like delayed. Ethiopia's Abiy says will not rule out possibility of negotiation with TPLF, while there are informal begging to the UA to help him negotiate with TPLF. Morgana Tayukina, Sputnik.
A doctor at a Mekelle hospital said that each rape victim typically reported 20 other women having been raped with her, who would not report the rape to any hospital. On 25 March 2021, British parliamentarian Helen Hayes stated that 10,000 women had been raped in the Tigray genocidal war. However, Tigray head of Health Bureau Dr. Godefroy stated this week 120,000 women have raped, out of them 40,000 found infected with HIV/AIDS. This report is only in 2 zones. There are 3 other zones of Tigray style under the genociders and looters. They slap a price on you. Ethiopian officials accused of extorting arbitrarily detained Tigrayans. 26 February 2022, Tamil Guardian. In a damning report by Al Jazeera, reporters uncovered a series of incidents where Ethiopian security officers have been extorting and abusing Tigrayan civilians detained without charge. Since an influx of arbitrary arrests last year, Ethiopian security forces, including prison wardens, government prosecutors and officials from the Attorney General's offices, have demanded exorbitant bribes for release. One Tigrayan detainee, held for 7 months until his family ultimately paid for his freedom, told Al Jazeera, "We have become a commodity in prison. They slap a price on you. Then your loved ones have to find the money and buy your freedom." Some relatives of prisoners told Al Jazeera that Ethiopian security officers demanded up to 500,000 Ethiopian birrs, or $10,000. However, with an average annual income of less than $1,000, many impoverished families cannot pay the hefty price. Some families have reported that security officials have demanded payment to secure drinking water, food, and medicine, and even allowed detainees to use the shower and toilets without the promise of release. Tigrayan detainees told Al Jazeera they were only given 2 pieces of bread to eat a day. The detainees who did not pay these erratic fees were eating, without ever washing their hands, even after toilet use. The conflict between the Ethiopian government and the Tigray's People's Liberation Front (TPLF) began in November 2020 after Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed launched a military offensive against the TPLF. The conflict has killed thousands and left hundreds of thousands facing famine-like conditions. As the internecine conflict ravaged the second most populous African country, massacres, rapes and deliberate starvation became commonplace. Tigrayans have been persecuted as the fragile ethnic harmony of the country crumbled, and public mood became more polarized. In January, a Human Rights Watch report revealed that thousands of Tigrayan migrant workers in Saudi Arabia who were deported to Ethiopia have been locked up in detention camps and forcibly disappeared. In December of 2021, the UN Human Rights Council voted to establish an international probe to investigate atrocities committed by both sides of the conflict in Ethiopia and prosecute those responsible.
The salt breeze came across of ethnic cleansing, Ethiopian allies accused of Abala massacre on the sea. Tigray genocide continued while the world is busy of crying in Ukrainian war. Survivors and witnesses say the Ethiopian Allied forces went door to door for 5 days straight, targeting Tigrayans. The report is from Al Jazeera, 25 February 2022. Desta Gabriananya remembers seeing hundreds of bodies littered all over the street, young men, children and even pregnant women, on December 24, 2021, just days after Ethiopian Allied forces raided her hometown of Abala in the Afar region. The 41-year-old and her 5 children were fleeing the community, which is at the border between the Afar and Tigray regions, after hiding for a week in the house of a neighbor, an ethnic Afar. They walked on foot for 3 days and then paid smugglers to cross into Tigray. Soldiers protected civilians of other ethnicities and erased the Tigrayans, said Desta, who now lives in the Detention camp for internally displaced people (IDP) on the outskirts of Mekelle, the Tigrayan capital. They killed, gang-raped, looted and arrested every Tigrayan they found in the town. Only if you knew an Afar to either hide you or help you escape, could you be saved. She still does not know whether her husband, who went missing in the melee, is dead or alive. Abala Ethiopia conflict map of Abala town in Ethiopia's Afar region, Al Jazeera. In the camp, there are almost 7,000 people who fled from Abala to Tigray in late December, including 26 girls who reported cases of sexual violence. The survivors, mostly women and children, are currently sheltered in 4 IDP centers including Detention, all located on the outskirts of Mekelle. As part of its investigation, Al Jazeera obtained testimonies from dozens of them. They exterminated us all, Desta said. No Tigrayans are left now in the town. They committed genocide against us. In November 2020, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed sent troops to the Tigray region to remove the northern region's governing party, the Tigray People's Liberation Front, from power, accusing it of attacking a military base. Since then, thousands have died and more than 9 million people are in need of urgent humanitarian intervention in a conflict that has escalated to neighboring regions of Amhara and Afar. Ethiopian federal forces and allied troops have been accused of weaponized sexual violence, mass detention and summary executions. As the conflict escalated to Amhara and Afar regions, the Tigrayan forces have also been accused of abuses against civilians. In June 2021, Eritrean troops retreated from much of Tigray when the rebel forces captured most of the region from the Ethiopian Federal Army. But Eritrea has since renewed its military partnership with the regional forces of Afar, one of 9 regional states in Ethiopia, which is next door to Asmara. Witnesses say the collaborative efforts between Ethiopia and its allies led to an attack on Abala, a community of predominantly Tigrayan people, in December. The invading military battled Tigrayan forces all of December 18, leading to the latter's retreat from the area. In the interregnum, the Allied forces killed unarmed Tigrayan civilians. Witnesses presented Al Jazeera with a list of 278 people they had confirmed dead. 15 survivors also recounted how Afar militiamen and Eritrean troops went from house to house, seeking Tigrayans out in a killing campaign that continued over 5 consecutive days. They came to our neighborhood at midday as I was baking injera in the backyard, says Asitika, another survivor from the IDP center of Lemlem. They shot my husband and 11 other Tigrayan neighbors they found around, she said. Among them were 4 boys under the age of 5 killed alongside their parents. For the next 5 days, Asi hid in her house, staring at her husband's corpse and praying the soldiers would not return. When the bloodletting slowed down on December 24, she fled. A new proxy front. This is part of the anti-Tigray pogrom and calculated ethnic cleansing by Ethiopian, Eritrean and Amhara forces in a new proxy front, said Mahari Tadele Maru, a human rights lawyer and professor at the European University Institute in Florence. These forces see the Afar region as the latest proxy war route, and it could quickly become the battleground for a web of conflicts that is likely to rage for years. As many as 90% of residents in the Afar region are ethnic Afar, but the town of Abala is an outlier, with Tigrayans accounting for almost 70%, according to local administrators. In August 2021, the Tigrayan forces were accused of murders and other atrocities in other towns in the Afar region, like Galakoma. Last December, the United Nations Human Rights Council passed a resolution to establish an independent investigation into violations committed by all warring parties in the ongoing conflict. Ethiopia's government objected to the resolution, calling it an instrument of political pressure. Since June 29, all communications to the Tigray region have been blocked. Al Jazeera reached out repeatedly by email to the spokespeople of the Ethiopian Prime Minister's office and Eritrea's Information Minister Yemane Gebremeskel for comments. Neither responded. However, Al Jazeera managed to contact survivors on the ground and gathered first-hand evidence of the massacre, including graphic footage of bodies and mass burial. One witness saw hundreds of bodies collected with a bulldozer and dumped in far-off craters. Witnesses also gave the name of Memher Tekest, a 51-year-old teacher who was killed together with 16 members of his extended family on December 21. Their bodies were dumped in a crater named Mise Hagola. Survivors gave a list of other victims and described similar cases of targeted killing of entire families to Al Jazeera. They were barging into houses, looting and gang-raping girls as young as 9, said Heg Tekelu, another resident of the IDP center of Mekane Kidusan. She fled Abala with her 3-year-old daughter. Tekelu said the people who hit her told her that the troops forcefully loaded hundreds of Tigrayans into trucks and headed towards detention camps in Samara, the Afar capital, on December 22. The continuing conflict between the troops is creating ruptures of socio-economic ties between these neighboring people, said Kjetil Tronvoll, head of Oslo Analytica consultancy firm and professor of peace and conflict studies at Bjorknes University College. Elders on both sides need to be engaged to try to prevent unnecessary civilian casualties and displacement. Desta and other survivors in the IDP centers consider themselves lucky to be alive and see no future in the past they escaped from. Seeing what I have seen, I have nothing left to go back, she says.
T-Tube argues Tigrayan forces are falsely alleged they are ethical and responsible, while Abiy's collective forces and invaders are trained to commit genocide. There has to be independent investigation. The butcher, Abiy, has blocked all medias including phone calls so as to lie and falsely accuse Tigrayan forces. Give all communication medias and let the people say who committed crimes against their
Tigrayans in UN peacekeeping force fear return to Ethiopia by Associated Press. Nairobi, Kenya. The United Nations is failing to fully support hundreds of ethnic Tigrayan members of a UN peacekeeping force as they fear returning home to Ethiopia and facing potential detention amid the country's Tigray conflict, peacekeepers tell the Associated Press. Their accounts highlight the concerns among Tigrayans after thousands of them, both military personnel and civilians, were detained throughout Ethiopia after the country's war erupted in November 2020 between Ethiopian forces and fighters from the Tigray region. An unknown number have been released in recent weeks after much of the fighting eased, and Ethiopia this week lifted a state of emergency. 2 Tigrayan peacekeepers told the app that they and hundreds of colleagues have ended the UN peacekeeping stint in Abyei, a region contested by Sudan and South Sudan, and are now expected to return to Ethiopia. They asserted that their peacekeeping camp is under Ethiopian control and UN personnel are not allowed access. Sergeant Angusam Gabru, who slipped away from the camp with a few dozen others, said the remaining Tigrayan peacekeepers can only walk away safely once they are taken to a local airport for flights back to Ethiopia, which began this week. But as Tigrayans refuse to board them, he said, there are fears that those still in the peacekeeping camp could face retaliation. Dozens of the Tigrayan peacekeepers held a protest against the war in Ethiopia this week. A photo taken and shared by Angusam shows the men and women, with the blue UN passes around their necks, standing with a handwritten sign reading, "Stop Genocide in Tigray." The Tigray region of some 6 million people has been largely blockaded by Ethiopia's government since June of last year as authorities claim that humanitarian aid or other supplies could be used in support of the Tigray forces. Fuel, cash and supplies available for humanitarian partners in Tigray are at near exhaustion level, the UN Humanitarian Agency said last week. A spokesman for Ethiopia's military and government did not respond to questions about the Tigrayan peacekeepers with the UN mission. Ethiopia's government has sought to portray a return to normal at home after the Tigray forces withdrew into their region in December under a drone-supported military offensive. The two peacekeepers told the app that Ethiopian authorities at the camp told the Tigrayans they would not be harmed if they returned home. But they said they weren't reassured, and they and colleagues who left the camp are sheltering with newly arrived peacekeepers from Ghana. Described themselves as stranded in a remote region on the border between two of the world's most troubled countries, Sudan and South Sudan. In a statement to AP, a UN peacekeeping spokesperson said, a number of peacekeepers have chosen not to return and are seeking international protection. They are being protected by the UN in a secure location. The spokesperson said the United Nations continues to engage at all levels to allow the peacekeeping personnel to make a free decision to either repatriate or to seek asylum in view of their fears to return home, adding that the responsibility to grant asylum lies with Sudanese authorities, who are assisted by the UN Refugee Agency in receiving them. It is not clear how many Tigrayan peacekeepers have refused to board the flights home. Ethiopia is one of the top 5 troop-contributing countries to UN peacekeeping missions, and the nation's war has turned the homecoming of Ethiopian peacekeepers into sometimes fraught, or even physical, affairs. In February 2021, more than a dozen Tigrayan members of the UN peacekeeping mission in South Sudan refused to board a flight home when their stay ended. And in April, UN spokesman Farhan Haq said a number of Ethiopians in the UN peacekeeping mission in Sudan's Darfur region sought international protection, as several hundred troops were being repatriated. A number of efforts have been undertaken over the past year that has resulted in Ethiopian peacekeepers, who were due to rotate out of our missions, seeking asylum in the countries where they were serving, the UN peacekeeping spokesperson said Wednesday. We have worked with UNHCR to ensure that all who wished to seek asylum have been given the opportunity to do so. This has been done in cooperation with the Ethiopian Peacekeeping Command and the host countries. Ethiopia's government has sought to restrict reporting on the war and detained some journalists under the recent state of emergency. Those still held include a video freelancer accredited to AP, Amir Aman Kayaro.
A doctor at a Mekelle hospital said that each rape victim typically reported 20 other women having been raped with her, who would not report the rape to any hospital. On 25 March 2021, British parliamentarian Helen Hayes stated that 10,000 women had been raped in the Tigray genocidal war. However, Tigray head of Health Bureau Drive Godefroy stated this week 120,000 women have raped, out of them 40,000 found infected with HIV, AIDS. This report is only in 2 zones. There are 3 other zones of Tigray style under the genociders and looters. Amnesty also reported on the 11th of August 2021 Ethiopia using rape as a strategy in Tigray war. The Ethiopian military and its allies are responsible for widespread sexual violence against women in Tigray, using rape as a strategy of war, Amnesty International says. The scale of violations during the 9-month conflict in the north of the country amounts to war crimes, the human rights group says. One woman reported being gang-raped in front of her children. Ethiopia's government says the report is based on flawed methodology. The Foreign Ministry accused Amnesty of waging sensationalized attacks and smear campaigns against Ethiopia, saying the country condemned sexual violence in all circumstances. Amnesty said it had overwhelming evidence to show such violence had been rampant since the start of the conflict. It began last November when the region's Tigray People's Liberation Front (TPLF) party stormed a military base after falling out with the prime minister over his political reforms. Warning: some people may find details in this story upsetting. The rights group interviewed 63 women and children from Tigray who said they have been raped by Ethiopian troops, their Eritrean allies, or by pro-government fighters from the neighboring region of Amhara. The author, Donatella Rivera, told the BBC that the testimonies had been among the worst she had ever heard. The level of sadistic and gratuitous brutality in addition to the rape was absolutely shocking, she said.
Secretary Blinken said the United States will be addressing the matter of Ukraine in the UN General Assembly, where the nations of the world can, will, and should hold Russia accountable and stand united with Ukraine in coordination with our allies and partners. We are continuing our unprecedented response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine by imposing strong sanctions on Russian President Putin, Foreign Minister Lavrov, Defense Minister Shoigu, and First Deputy Defense Minister Gerasimov. However, Tigrayans are gravely concerning the war Ukraine is hiding Tigray genocide. Blinken also stated there are restrictions on Somalian leaders. There are consequences for obstructing Somalia's democratic process. Today, we are imposing visa restrictions on those responsible for another missed election deadline. Visa restrictions on individuals responsible for undermining the democratic process in Somalia. Press statement on Department of State stated. The delay in the conclusion of Somalia's elections is driving political instability, threatening security gains, and undermining economic development. On February 8, I announced a visa restriction policy under Section 212(3)(c) of the Immigration and Nationality Act to restrict the issuance of visas for those believed to be responsible for, or complicit in, undermining the democratic process in Somalia. Following the failure to meet another self-established deadline of February 25 for completion of parliamentary elections, the National Consultative Council extended the deadline to March 15. Dozens of parliamentary seats are still unfilled and there is no clear plan to conclude the process. We are now imposing visa restrictions under this policy against a number of Somali officials and other individuals to promote accountability for their obstructionist actions. Procedural irregularities and partisan use of security forces have undermined an electoral process that is more than a year behind schedule. Journalists and opposition party members working to support democratic institutions and transparent processes have been targeted with harassment, intimidation, arrest, and violence. The political impasse also has broader implications, including undermining Somalia's economic reforms and putting in jeopardy timely international debt relief. Somalia must rapidly complete its parliamentary and presidential elections in a transparent and credible manner. The U.S. government will evaluate additional actions under this policy and other tools at our disposal to promote accountability and to support Somalia's democratic process. The United States strongly supports the Somali people and remains committed to working to advance democracy and mutual prosperity for both our countries. T-Tube is wishing justice from God for all participants on Tigray genocide like Ukraine, Somalia and Ethiopia, Eritrea, Turkey and UAE. eBay removes looted Tigrayan property from its page. T-Tube accused eBay, the American online selling company, last month of selling Tigrayan looted heritages, antiques and ancient private properties looted by the invaders, Eritrean, Ethiopian, Somalia, Amhara, other invited invaders by the butcher and genocider Abiy Ahmed Ali. It is doubted that eBay removes from an open selling of Tigrayan heritages and antiques, following the accusation of Tigrayan diaspora in America and their rally in front of eBay head office. T-Tube is calling the international community to condemn the eBay participating on illegal and criminal acts. It is not the first time for the Amhara to invade and destroy Tigray, they have been doing the same acts during Gran Ahmed and Udit Gudat invasions. The Amhara destroyed Tigrayan monasteries and churches. Now, they are doing the same thing. The Amhara also invaded their own county in collaboration with Mussolini of Italy. We know, Menelik II sold Eritrea, and Djibouti, and some parts of Sudan and Somalia for some cheap armaments.
They slap a price on you. Ethiopian officials accused of extorting arbitrarily detained Tigrayans. The 26th of February 2022, Tamil Guardian. In a damning report by Al Jazeera, reporters uncovered a series of incidents where Ethiopian security officers have been extorting and abusing Tigrayan civilians detained without charge. Since an influx of arbitrary arrests last year, Ethiopian security forces, including prison wardens, government prosecutors and officials from the Attorney General's offices, have demanded exorbitant bribes for release. One Tigrayan detainee, held for 7 months until his family ultimately paid for his freedom, told Al Jazeera, "We have become a commodity in prison. They slap a price on you. Then your loved ones have to find the money and buy your freedom." Some relatives of prisoners told Al Jazeera that Ethiopian security officers demanded up to 500,000 Ethiopian birrs, or $10,000. However, with an average annual income of less than $1,000, many impoverished families cannot pay the hefty price. Some families have reported that security officials have demanded payment to secure drinking water, food, and medicine, and even allowed detainees to use the shower and toilets without the promise of release. Tigrayan detainees told Al Jazeera they were only given 2 pieces of bread to eat a day. The detainees who did not pay these erratic fees were eating, without ever washing their hands, even after toilet use. The conflict between the Ethiopian government and the Tigray People's Liberation Front (TPLF) began in November 2020 after Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed launched a military offensive against the TPLF. The conflict has killed thousands and left hundreds of thousands facing famine-like conditions. As the internecine conflict ravaged the second most populous African country, massacres, rapes and deliberate starvation became commonplace. Tigrayans have been persecuted as the fragile ethnic harmony of the country crumbled, and public mood became more polarized. In January, a Human Rights Watch report revealed that thousands of Tigrayan migrant workers in Saudi Arabia who were deported to Ethiopia have been locked up in detention camps and forcibly disappeared. In December of 2021, the UN Human Rights Council voted to establish an international probe to investigate atrocities committed by both sides of the conflict in Ethiopia and prosecute those responsible. Ethiopia's Abiy says will not rule out possibility of negotiation with TPLF. Abiy Ahmed is the most recognized deceptive. His government is known for huge lies. At the beginning of his invasion he lied the world that Eritrean troops have not involved in the genocidal war. Then he added other lie: he withdrawn his troops from Tigray. Still now his is lying. A key requirement for peace as laid out by Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is for the Tigray People's Liberation Front (TPLF) to recognize the legitimacy of his government. So far, the group has postured as an equal state actor to Addis Ababa instead of as a militant group in rebellion, so talks have not begun. Speaking before the Ethiopian parliament on Tuesday, Abiy said that talks with the TPLF to end the 15-month-long armed conflict were still possible. Despite its designation as a terrorist group, there has been no negotiation yet. This does not rule out the possibility of discussions. Negotiation is a method of identifying problem-solving options. We have been betrayed while making efforts to rebuild, acknowledging that the region is a part of our country, Abiy said, according to the Twitter account for his office. Negotiation is the upcoming all-inclusive national consultation. The commissioners of the newly constituted National Dialogue Commission have simply been given the task of coming up with proposals. The Ethiopian people will make the final decisions, he added. Abiy also addressed the recent pardoning of several political prisoners, saying they had been released for 3 reasons: to bring lasting peace, taking into consideration the overall situation of the prisoners, and to consolidate our victory. In a war, there is no such thing as a total triumph. When one party wins a combat while the other party is momentarily defeated, this is known as temporary victory. In turn, the defeated party would resurrect an assault, he said. As a result, true triumph necessitates victory in the realm of peace. This decision has greatly helped Ethiopia. We must not compromise on decisions for the lasting good of the country. The TPLF ruled Ethiopia for 27 years before Abiy came to power in 2018 and set about reorganizing Ethiopian politics to reduce the party's domineering position. In response, the group rebelled, attacking Ethiopian National Defense Forces (ENDF) in the northern Tigray state in November 2020. The 15-month-long war has created a massive humanitarian crisis that is parallel to a climate change-driven drought across the Horn of Africa, and large parts of neighboring Amhara and Far states were destroyed, pillaged, looted, or otherwise brutalized by a TPLF occupation that ended in December. Most recently, the TPLF launched a new attack into Ofar, which locals say is aimed at Eritrean refugees and not an alleged Eritrean-backed militia. A refugee camp came under attack by unknown gunmen in a TPLF-controlled part of Afar earlier this month, according to the UN High Commissioner on Refugees. Abiy's office formed the National Dialogue Commission in late December, when the TPLF was forced back into Tigray. However, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Dina Mufti said at the time that it was a dialogue among the citizens but not a negotiation. TPLF is a designated terrorist organization by the House of People's Representatives, and the Ethiopian government won't sit for negotiation with this organization. The terms for peace laid out by Abiy in November included the TPLF withdrawing from Amhara and Afar, ceasing its attacks on Ethiopian and Eritrean forces, and recognizing Abiy's government as the legitimate government of all of Ethiopia. However, since its pullback, the TPLF has appealed to the United Nations for help in maintaining a ceasefire and other measures, such as humanitarian aid, but refused any similar appeal to Addis Ababa.
Ethiopia's Abiy says will not rule out possibility of negotiation with TPLF. Abiy Ahmed is the most recognized deceptive. His government is known for huge lies. At the beginning of his invasion, he lied the world that Eritrean troops have not involved in the genocidal war. Then he added other lie: he withdrawn his troops from Tigray. Still now his is lying. Simon Tesfamariam, executive director of the New Africa Institute, told Radio Sputnik's By Any Means Necessary in December that since 1976, the TPLF had conceived of Tigrayans as fundamentally separate from other Ethiopian ethnic groups and sought to create an independent Greater Tigray state, which would expand its territories to the sea, meaning compromising Eritrean sovereignty, and then also into the interior of Ethiopia, taking lands, ancestral lands, of other peoples. The Federal Parliamentary Assembly, Ethiopia's parliament, announced on Monday the appointment of the 11-member commission from more than 600 candidates. It has been tasked with presenting proposals for ending the conflict with the TPLF, as well as simmering tensions with other ethnic groups in the country. The OLF Sheen, a split of the Oromo Liberation Front (OLF), that refused a 2018 peace deal, supports the TPLF and is accused of carrying out attacks against Amhara civilians and Amhara special forces. But all this was lie, and deceptive fabricated by Abiy Ahmed Ali and his allied powers. This was our today's program. Thank you for waiting with us. Please subscribe and share our channel, and be the voice for the voiceless people who are dying in a Hoyden horror.